now we'll be looking at the brain. So in our scriptures, brain is not much the brain is not much described or given much importance. In fact, in the Buddha's time, it was believed that brain is a kind of bone marrow, and if you are ill, the brain actually decays and creates a liquid, which is the mucus. Right? Brain absolutely does not create any mucus. It's a total nonsense. It's absolutely wrong. And that's what we have in our scriptures. The Buddha did not speak about the brain, but it's the commentaries that provide more information for meditators, so that meditators are more confident about what they are observing in the practice. Now, we will here not look at the brain in the way how the scriptures describe it, because it's simply wrong, but we'll be looking at it in terms of the anatomical function and appearance. So before we get to the brain, I would like to show you that the brain is covered by several layers, and it has by quite a few layers. So as you can see, these are layers and layers and layers. So here we have one transparent layer, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 layers, all right, that are all covering the brain. That's why even though the head may be big, in the end, the brain is actually very small or relatively small. So here we get the layers in a different way. So this is the brain, and it is supported, it is protected by the so-called pia mater. Pia mater and dura mater are two very important protective layers. Then you get the skull, the bone, and then you get another layer that covers the skull, that covers the bone. That's why it's called periosteum. Peri means around, osteum is related to bone, so it's around or covering the bone. And then there is the skull, so there's fat and skin. Okay, so now what we're looking at is the cranial dura. The cranial dura mater is the most superficial of the 3 meningeal layers and covers the entire brain down to the foramen magnum. So what is meningeal? We'll have that explained in more detail later. We'll be talking about what's meningeal a little later. I don't know why I don't have it here. So this cover, this strong protective cover, covers not only the brain around, but also inside. So you will have this falx cerebri, which is between the 2 hemispheres, between the 2 halves of the brain, and you get even further portion here at below, which separates the cerebellum, the tiny small part of the brain, from the big hemispheres. So here you can see how the cranial dura, how it is shaped exactly according to the brain. So now we are looking at the gray matter and the white matter. The gray matter and the white matter make up the outer layer of the brain. The outer layer of the brain is a very important part of the brain that serves for exchange of information and for, well, storing. It doesn't really store, but it provides the potential for firing. And when the neurons fire, well, then it's possible to remember or to do or to think or whatever the brain needs to do. So there are neurons. These neurons are tiny little fibers which carry electric signal, and they exchange that signal chemically. So that's why it's called electrochemical information transfer, or how would you say it? So the white matter contains the bodies of the neurons, whereas or they are called axons. So they connect the different parts of the gray matter to each other, or they actually are simply the bodies, the long threads of those neurons, whereas the gray matter, they're the heads, or they're called the dendrites. Well, here they call them cell bodies, but that's not what I wanted. So dendrites or and the axon terminals, they are what make up the gray matter. And they say also the cell bodies, but the white matter is made up of the axons. So, so the axons, how would you say it in English? But I would call it body, but as you can see, the word body is already used for something else. So axons are the fibers that connect the heads, and the heads are here called dendrites. Dendrites literally mean branches. So it's like the axons are like the stalks or the trunks, tree trunks, whereas the dendrites would be the branches. It is the white matter that allows communication to and from gray matter areas, because those are just the connecting fibers, and controls the functions the body is unaware of, such as temperature, blood pressure, and heart rate. So how do we know that they control temperature, blood pressure, and heart rate? Well, these are all just conjectures, they're ideas, they're theories. Whatever we talk about, whatever are the functions by the separate brain parts, they're just conjectures, ideas, beliefs, fantasies. Where do these ideas, beliefs, fantasies come? Well, they come based on statistics. They come based on statistics. They come based on observable nature. So, for example, somebody will have an injury in a certain part of the brain. And let's say there are 10,000 people who have that injury in that certain part of the brain. And so the scientists will collect this data, and they will see, okay, so 10,000 people had injury in this particular part of the brain. And they will look at what is the problem that the person is experiencing. Are they experiencing problem with speech, or with recognizing faces, or with remembering things? And when they see that out of these 10,000 people, 9,950 people have problems with memory, then they will say, aha, so this part of the brain that's injured actually is responsible for memory. And then if we ask them, so what about the other 50 people who did not have that problem? They will say, we don't know. Well, but wait, if that part of the brain is responsible for memory and somebody has injury in that part of the brain and does not have problem with memory, well, then is that part of the brain responsible for memory or not? And the answer is, we don't know. Okay, that's called neuroscience. Neuroscience is all the science of probabilities. It's not a science of yes or no. Doesn't exist. And many scientists today who are rather serious and realistic, they're criticizing. They're very severely criticizing the neuroscience, basically all of neuroscience, because all of neuroscience is based on statistics. It doesn't really tell you yes or no. And that's also the point of the brain, because all brain is based on statistics. Sometimes it does this when this is what happened. Sometimes it doesn't do it. Sometimes you get kids who have 10% of the brain or 5% of the brain, but then they go to university, they study mathematics, and they get degree in mathematics. So wait, there's a problem. And how do you resolve it? By theory, by fantasy, by ideas. That's how you resolve that problem. Or if you're sincere, you'll say, I'm sorry, I don't know. But scientists don't like to say that because they will not get money for that. Okay, so that's the problem with brain. So we'll be looking at those fantasies. So according to these fantasies or statistics, this portion, this is the front of the brain. You have it actually mentioned here, and the back is over there. So the front portion, if it gets lesion, which is a fancy word for injury, if there is a lesion in the brain, then you are supposed to have problems with logical thinking, emotional traits, judgment, speech, voluntary movement, or you will not have those problems. If you have an injury or so-called lesion, L-E-S-I-O-N, lesion, at the so-called temporal lobe, well, then you will probably have problem with language, behavior, memory, or hearing, or you will not have that problem. Or you may have an injury with the parietal lobe. And if you have injury there, well, then you may not be able to recognize what's right, what's left. You may not be able to work with your sensations, with reading and body orientation. Or the occipital lobe, which is at the back, this pink portion. So you may have problems with color vision, perception. There was this case of this Japanese doctor who saw these soldiers from the Second World War, that they had holes in their brain and they still survived. And they had holes specifically here at the back of the brain. And they had holes in the brain, and they also had black spots in their vision. And this doctor found that exactly according to those holes in that back of the brain, they had those particular black spots. So if the bullet went through the brain in a different direction or different angle, well, then they would see black spots in a different place in their vision. So they came to the conclusion that the back of the brain is actually responsible for vision. Then scientists did something very interesting, very non-Buddhist. They took a monkey and they got the monkey to watch a picture. Then they killed the monkey, they froze his brain. And then after the brain was frozen, they cut the monkey here at this place, and they could see what the monkey saw from that part of the brain, because what we see is actually mirrored. It is copied at the back of the head. So when you slice the head at that place, you can actually see there a picture of what the person saw by their eyes. So how did the scientists got the permission, to kill the monkey while the monkey was watching a picture, freeze his brain and then cut it in pieces? That I don't know how they did that. But anyway, that's what they did. And so that's why we know that the back part of the brain is responsible for vision. Then this cerebellum. The cerebellum is supposed to be responsible for balance, for voluntary movement. But there is a lady who had no cerebellum, zero cerebellum. She did have some problems with movement, but not that she would be just lying down and doing nothing. Not at all. She was married. She had kids. And she had no cerebellum. They found it out because she came to the doctor and she said, I have some problem with when I'm walking. Okay. So there are people who just don't have certain parts of the brain and they just live. They get married, they have kids, they get degrees. So these ideas about brain, are not really reliable. So you learn about science. Oh, science is just the way how to get knowledge. But no, actually, science is the way how to work with probabilities. It's all about probabilities. So sometimes it's right, and sometimes it's not. So now let's look at some brain problems. So you have here a little picture of the veins and arteries. Brain is entirely dependent on blood. Without blood, brain is dead. It's extremely important to provide a large amount of blood all the times to the brain. Without blood, it's death. And when there is too much blood, like here in the hemorrhage, or when there is too little blood, like when you get this a ball of blood. Sometimes a ball of blood happens to form, and it's called blood clot, C-L-O-T. And this blood clot travels in the arteries, for example, and it enters the brain, and then it blocks the vein or the artery. And when it's blocked, well, then no blood can go that way. And so that's a problem. There are two main types of stroke: ischemic, due to lack of blood flow, including due to a blood clot, and hemorrhagic, due to bleeding. Okay. So, I have here any incomplete information. Intracerebral hemorrhage. So an intracerebral hemorrhage, that means blood discharge inside the brain, is one kind of bleeding within the skull and one kind of stroke as well. Symptoms include headache, one-sided weakness, vomiting, seizures, decreased level of consciousness, and neck stiffness. Often symptoms get worse over time. Fever is also common. Causes include brain trauma, aneurysms, arteriovenous malformations, and brain tumors. Aneurysm, what is that? I see. So aneurysm means, it seems that it means deformation of what is it? Bulge or ballooning in a blood vessel. So it means it's a deformation of the shape of a blood vessel. Arteriovenous malformations, which seems to be quite similar, and brain tumors. Okay, maybe that's unnecessarily too much detail. So brain trauma, arteriovenous malformations, and brain tumors. Hematoma versus hemorrhage. Hematoma is bleeding between layers of tissue, but hemorrhage is bleeding in a larger area inside or outside the body. Hematomas can cause complications such as a sore developing, or if in the brain, neurological damage can result. A hemorrhage, if uncontrolled, can lead to low blood pressure, organ failure, and even death. So hematoma is bleeding inside a certain tissue alone, whereas hemorrhage is going of the blood out of a certain particular tissue, or so it seems. So now we will be looking at some most famous parts of the brain. So we have here thalamus. Thalamus is this purple blob that's sitting on the that is sitting on a little throne. It's not that easy to see it, but right under the thalamus there is a little flat throne, and this flat throne is called hypothalamus because it's under. Hypo means under, thalamus is thalamus. So it's under the thalamus, so it's called hypothalamus. We cannot really see it well here, but it's a kind of piece of flat tissue that's under the thalamus. So we get thalamus, then we get hypothalamus under that, then we get amygdala over here, and we get the pituitary gland. We already talked about it a little. And then this larger portion is the cerebellum, which is supposed to be responsible for our ability to move the body. And then we get the amygdala. Amygdala is believed to be responsible for our emotional reactions. So thalamus, it's known as a relay station of all incoming movement and sensory information, hearing, taste, sight, and touch, but not smell, from your body to your brain. Amygdala is processes fears and threats. Cerebellum is especially responsible for physical movement, and that's all in very brief. Then we will look at it from behind, and here we will see thalamus again, and the little throne on which it is sitting over here. And the little tail of the thalamus is called pineal gland. So pineal gland produces the hormone serotonin, which affects wake or sleep patterns and seasonal functions. Seasonal functions, I think I have that explained somewhere else. Seasonal functions. Okay. So seasonal functions are simply functions in the body that change according to the environment around. And it seems regularly, but I will have to research. I thought I wrote already the explanation here, but somehow it's not in here. It also, yes, that's what we already know. Serotonin is an important chemical and neurotransmitter in the human body. It is believed to help regulate mood and social behavior, appetite and digestion, sleep, memory, and sexual desire and sexual function. So as you can see, the serotonin is a very powerful hormone. These hormones, the knowledge of these hormones is very important, because if something doesn't go as expected, the doctors or researchers, they're able to collect that hormone and provide it to the body so that the body is doing what it should. And if it's too much, then there may be sometimes counteracting hormones or some counteracting functions in the brain. So then the doctors have to collect that kind of chemical or that kind of substance, which they will then provide as a medicine, and that medicine can help reduce the hormone which is too much. Now we will be looking at the neurons. So the neurons, so-called bodies, but I don't agree really that it's called so. So here's the cell, so-called cell body, and there are dendrites. So from this cell body, you get another branches. And when it's branching, then those branches are called dendrites. But then there are connections. I will be looking at connections, and probably here. So how do I do this? So we will be now looking at how the seeing process happens, and then how the neurons communicate with each other. So as we see, whenever we see things, we first see things black and white. Gradually, the brain then interprets the black and white into some kind of meaning and color. So, for example, you see something with your eyes that is reflected at the back of your head. It's called visual cortex, but you see it only as an outline. Then gradually the brain will recognize what's this about through this so-called fusiform face area. So you then recognize that it's somebody's face. And then it will go to the frontal lobe, and in the frontal lobe, it will be recognized what should you do about that person. So should you be angry with the person, or speak with them, or not speak with them, or be nice to them, or do whatever else. So that's the prefrontal cortex is behind your judgment, your decision what to do and what not to do. So now we are looking at a so-called synapse. So this is a place where two heads, or so-called two cell bodies, are close to each other, and there will be a transfer of information. So from one of the ends, we will see that there is a movement. There's an electric signal coming into this head, or into this so-called cell body, and that electric signal will make certain chemicals to be transferred from that head to the other head. Then as there is this transfer happening, there will be some other chemicals that will take those chemicals back. So they need to be back, so that when there is another signal happening, again, that signal can make those chemicals discharged to the other head. So these chemicals that we see moving towards the other head, they cause electric signal in the other neuron. However, the chemicals have to return back to their home, or to their base. Now, what we see is a not very good picture of the brain activity. So maybe if you look very carefully in that picture, you could possibly see that there are little signals happening. Not sure if that's visible. Not visible even to me. But there are very slight electric signals that could be visible by the microscope. So now we are looking at the way how we actually see things. So it seems that the eyes see left and right as two different things. So the left eye sees left things and right things, and the right eye sees right things and left things as well. They merge somewhere, and the eyes, they get the eyes, our the field of our sight gets merged at certain point in the middle, but each eye sees also its unique portion. So whatever is seen is inverted. So whatever is left becomes right, whatever is right becomes left. And then that is sent to the so-called optic chiasma. And then in the so-called lateral geniculate nucleus, which I think is a portion of thalamus, there in the optic chiasma and so on, it becomes, it merges the left and right from both of the eyes. They get corrected and they merge together. So here, all of the left things, they get merged at the lateral geniculate nucleus, and whatever is right from both of the eyes gets merged in the lateral geniculate nucleus again. And then they are sent to the back of the head, to the occipital lobe, and there they make up together one picture. So here what we see are the so-called rods and cones. They're photoreceptor cells that help us distinguish color. Now, it's good to know that nerves are throughout the body. You need nerves for your muscle function because nerves send signals to the muscles so that the muscles move. And basically everything in the body is dependent on nerves. So you need to get the information from the brain, the instructions, what to do, what not to do. And also you need to get the blood vessels, the blood to bring the energy, namely the oxygen, so that the cells can create energy from that oxygen. So in the body, you need two things everywhere, and that's the nerves and the blood vessels. So something didn't go right. Okay, now it's right. So this was all for the brain. Now these 20 parts that we're looking at during the last few days are representing the so-called element of hardness. You will not be observing, you will not be considering impermanence, danger, and absence of control in the parts of the body anymore. For today or the upcoming 24 hours, you will be instead considering their elemental nature. So all of the 20 parts of the body that we're speaking about represent the element of hardness. So you will be looking at the measurement of hardness. Some of them are softer, some of them are harder. Doesn't matter. They are representing hardness in contrast to the other parts of the body which do not represent hardness. For example, blood or sweat or fat or what else? Phlegm or saliva and so on. These 20 parts that we looked at represent hardness in contrast to the liquids. Liquids instead represent cohesion. So you will be looking at those 20 parts as representing hardness, and that will be their sameness. So you consider them as the same among each other, only those 20. Do not compare those parts that represent hardness to those that represent cohesion. No, they're separate things. So you consider those 20 parts as one closed group. And then now will be coming 12 liquids, and they are one closed group. The first group of 20 represent hardness. The second group of 12 represent cohesion. You should not mix them up. You should not say, but actually blood also has some hardness, doesn't it? But actually bones also have some cohesion, don't they? No, that's not how you meditate this practice. Do not consider the 20 parts that represent hardness in any way as cohesion. No. Do not consider the 12 parts that represent cohesion in any way as hardness. You could do this at an advanced level, but not at this level. So avoid it, because this is not the instruction for this day, right? So we are very strict. 20 parts that represent hardness will be considered only with hardness and nothing else. 12 parts that represent cohesion will be considered only with cohesion and not with anything else. You need to understand it, because if you do this wrong, then you totally mess up this practice. We don't want that. So now we will be looking at the 12 liquids. So first one is bile. Bile is produced by the gallbladder, and it helps with digestion. It breaks down the fats into fatty acids. We already talked about this. Here we see the gallbladder, but you consider gallbladder as part of the liver. Pa Aung Sayadaw, the famous meditation master in Myanmar, suggests that you consider gallbladder as together with bile. But I worry that gallbladder actually, as the sac or as the bag, is not in any way liquid. It does not have this property of cohesion in the way that the liquids do. So the bag of gallbladder should be considered together with the liver. Then we get phlegm. So we will be considering mucus and phlegm separately. All right, the Buddha taught mucus and phlegm separately. How are they different? Mucus is a thinner secretion from your nose and sinuses. So we already talked about sinuses. They are the hollow spaces in the bones, in the forehead and behind the nose and by the sides of the nose. Those are the sinuses. And these sinuses, as well as the nose, they produce a thin liquid. Okay. What is a thin liquid? Thin liquid is a liquid that's not thick. Thin liquid, for example, is water. Thick liquid is, for example, fat. And in this case, mucus is rather thin. It's more similar to water than fat. Now, phlegm, in contrast to mucus, is thicker. Okay, it's thicker. That means its consistency is more similar to fat, and is made by your throat and lungs. So the throat and lungs produce phlegm, which is thicker, and the nose and sinuses, the hollow spaces in the skull, they produce mucus, which is thinner. All right, this will be difficult to remember and to learn, but if you can, well, then the practice will be a little easier, because you'll be able to recognize mucus from phlegm. Mucus lines the moist surfaces of the body, including the lungs, sinuses, mouth, eyes, and even the stomach and intestines. And it is usually clear or gray. Snot is the substance produced in the nose and sinuses. So here you see snot and mucus. I see. So we are now going to make it a little more complicated, and we get mucus in contrast to snot. So snot is produced in the nose and sinuses during an infection. So you're considering mucus, not snot. Snot is the result of a problem, okay, when you have an infection. Lung phlegm is the good mucus mixed with inflammatory cells that give it color. All right, so you get phlegm, mucus, and snot, but you will be considering only mucus and phlegm. Mucus is the thin liquid made by the nose and sinuses. Phlegm is is a different liquid that's produced by the lungs. Mucus is extremely important in the gastrointestinal tract. It forms an essential layer in the colon and in the small intestine that helps reduce intestinal inflammation by decreasing bacterial interaction with intestinal epithelial cells. So mucus, which is discharged by the nose and it's produced by the nose and the sinuses, somehow combines with your food, or you somehow swallow it, so it goes into your intestines. Then in the intestines, it provides a kind of protection in the walls, on the walls of your intestines. It's a protection from the bacteria that may be coming with the food that you eat. Okay, so we have here some more information, but we have to go faster. We see here a pus. Pus is a whitish yellow or brown yellow protein-rich fluid called by a Latin name that accumulates at the site of an infection. It consists of a buildup of dead white blood cells that form when the body's immune system responds to the infection. In other words, pus is made up of the white cells which died in the fight with infection. Okay. So here we see pus with ingrown hair, which can be a cause of quite uncomfortable problems in the body. And we move on to the blood. Blood, as I've already mentioned a while ago, needs to be available throughout the body because every single cell in your body needs blood and is dependent on blood. Now here we see a blood vessel together with blood. As you can see, blood is accompanied by various things. It's accompanied by bacteria and white blood cells. The white blood cells have to eat the bacteria, the viruses, and the dirt. Then we will be looking a little bit at blood diseases. So there's deep vein thrombosis, which is believed to be caused sometimes by meditation, but that's a total nonsense. Meditation does not cause deep vein thrombosis. Meditation causes a problem with nerves, not with veins or arteries. So deep vein thrombosis sometimes comes with age, and it basically they're blood clots which block the veins and arteries, and that's where the blood starts to accumulate in those veins, arteries, as it tries to go through, but it doesn't work, and that's why the limbs or those places get swollen. Now we are looking at leukemia. So leukemia is a kind of blood cancer. So in there, the blood does not completely develop from the developing cells. Instead of getting a nice complete blood cells, you get something else. And that what you get is dangerous. It's not the true blood. It's like fake blood. And whatever is this fake blood or this inflation of blood, when it comes to the body and it starts to be too much, well, then the blood doesn't do what it should do. And so the bodily cells, they do not get what they should get. And the body, however, deals with the fake blood as if they were true. And so it creates a problem in the body. In a normal case, undeveloped cells take up about 1 to 2% of blood-related cells in the bone marrow. So it seems that 1 to 2% is not a problem. In leukemia, undeveloped cells exceed 20% of blood-related cells in the bone marrow. In other words, you get 20% of your blood is fake blood, not true blood, and then spread into the bloodstream. This results in higher amount of white blood cells, which try to resolve the occurrence of the undeveloped cells. So then white blood cells come to fight this fake blood. And that, of course, causes a problem. This results in higher amount of, yes, okay. And then the person experiences fever, fatigue, bone pain, bleeding, and increased risk of infections. Why bleeding? Well, you start to, there are actually wears and tears in the body quite often. And so the blood needs to be available to repair them. But if the blood is fake, well, then the fake blood will not help you. It will not repair those tears. And so you get bleeding there where normal blood would simply repair it and it's fine. But the blood does not repair it because only fake blood is available. And so sorry. So the tears become bigger and bigger and it's a problem. Sweat. And then we have fat. Fat looks like this under in the stomach. Then we get tears. Grease is like sweat, but it's in the forehead. Saliva. Now we get here the mucus. The mucus is created by the nose and the sinuses. It's not phlegm. Phlegm is created by the lungs. Now we get oil of the joints. So there where you get your joints, you get their oil, and that's liquid. And then urine. So now I will send you the list of those liquids. So they will be bile, so we get bile, then phlegm,
The next one is phlegm mucus.
excuse me?
No, nothing, sorry.
Blood, sweat, phlegm, tears. That's CG. Probably the grease. Saliva. Mucus. Oil of joints. and then you're in. All right. So I'm sending it to you in the chat box, so you can write it down. You may need to keep the paper or iPad or something in front of you during meditation, so you follow the order correctly. And now we will be looking at the element of heat and the element of motion. So there are 4 parts of the body that represent the element of heat. So let me write it for you in the chat box. All right. Element of heat. So they are, first one, heat of fever, heat of aging, heat of high bodily temperature, and then we get heat of digestion. So heat actually is maturation. You can consider the element of heat as things changing, the change of things. So heat of fever is changing things. It changes the state of your body from non-fever into a fever. Heat of aging is changing your body quite profoundly. The heat of high bodily temperature means when you feel that it's very hot to you, then that's what we mean. And heat of digestion is the change, is the maturation of that what you have eaten into the chemicals and needed things and the poop as well. So these are 4 representative physiological processes that represent heat. Now we will be looking at 6 more parts that represent element of movement, and they are 1, belching, 2, breaking wind, 3, movement, 1st, movement in the belly outside the intestines, movement in the intestines. Then we get movement in limbs, and then breath. So these are 6 physiological processes that represent the element of movement. All right. So movement in the belly outside the intestines is such as belly and chest, so that would be the heart and lungs and the whatever is the other movement of the liquids, movement of what else moves? Yes, the heart and lungs are pretty easy to understand. The movement of the liquids, movement of the veins and arteries, and so on. So throughout the body, there are some movements. You can consider them as the element of air. Then there's movement in the intestines. All of the intestines, they have to a little bit, like press, so that they send the digested food downwards. So that's it. Those are the 23 things. So that was the brain, then the 12 liquids, 4 fires, and 6 airs. Anyone has any question about how to practice this practice? Now I would like to suggest that instead of keeping 2 sessions for 1 cycle, you keep maximum 1 session for 1 cycle. So you need to be faster. You need to be 4 times faster. Okay, you need to be double faster than you were yesterday, and plus another double faster so that you can add in these 23 parts. Okay, so you need to be 4 times faster than you were yesterday, but hopefully yesterday you somehow got used to the 20 parts. So today adding 23, actually 19. So today adding another 23 should not be so difficult. You can consider the liquids at once. So you do not really scan the body, for example, for blood or for sweat and so on. You just consider, okay, so this body has the potential to create sweat, or this body has the potential to create pus, or in this body there's flowing blood and so on. And you consider each and every of these so-called 42 parts. So 20 for hardness, then 12 for cohesion, 4 for heat, 6 for movement. You consider them just as those elements. You do not consider their danger, absence of control, or impermanence. And the aim is to see the sameness among the 20 for the hardness, the sameness, separate, different sameness among the 12 for the cohesion, different sameness among the 4 for the heat or maturation, and different sameness for the 6 among those that represent element of air. So from me, that's complete. Anyone has any question, anything you'd like to know? Yes, Mrs. Min. You need to unmute yourself. I can't hear you. You're muted. You need to use the unmute button.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I have the list here, 20 elements of hardness. No, I'm sorry, there's some music. I have to go outside.
We cannot hear the music though. So if it doesn't disturb you, it's fine.
It's okay. Yeah. So we have the list here, 20 elements of hardness, 12 elements of and so on.
Parts. There are
So,
20 parts. There are 20 parts that represent hardness, 12 parts that
12
represent
of
cohesion.
water cohesion, 4 of heat or maturation, and 6 of movement.
Yes.
So in one session, how can we do it in
Need to be
all
fast.
of that?
Need to be
All
fast.
of that.
Yes. Or 42.
Yeah.
Imagine that you would do 30-minute session. Then good luck.
Okay. Okay, we'll try. Too much. Okay.
Yeah, this amount, probably the amount of these parts has also the intention that you do not even have time to consider their specifics. So you have been learning the specifics and hearing a lot about their specifics. But as the time goes, the idea is that you will remove the specifics and you will only consider their sameness. What is the same among each other?
Yeah, I got it. So just a very quick scanning to see the, yeah. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Nguyen Phong.
Yeah, so when we start this cycle, we can start in any element, or we need in order, like we have to start with the earth first, 20 parts, any order, or we can start with.
Must be exactly this order. So write it down carefully.
No, I mean, sorry, the order of like we start the earth first, the hardness first, and next one, the order in the liquid.
No,
and
first
next
it's hardness, then you
Yes.
get cohesion, then you get heat, and then you get movement.
Okay, got it. Okay. And we still do the scanning the muscle at the starting, right?
Yes, every single session you start with 1 cycle of observing muscles.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yes, Mrs. Nguyen Thu Trang.
Yes, I have a question. So in this practice from today, we will not consider this part as impermanent, dangerous, and out of control. Right? Okay. And because like normally yesterday when I observed the digestion system, I also I also observed the movement of the intestine. So can we mix them together, like when we observe the digestion, and we will observe the movement as well of that part, or we need to separate the other thing like movement and the hardness.
Must be separate. Must be separate because you're watching for the sameness. That's the same among all of the. For example, in the heat, you're watching the sameness among fever, aging, bodily temperature, and digestion. They're totally different things, but still you're supposed to somehow discover how they are the same.
To discover. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Hi.
I cannot hear you.
Oh.
Microphone. Yes, now I can hear you. Yes.
I was waiting for so can you explain breaking wind again? I missed that part.
You don't know what's breaking wind? I see. Then search it in Google or dictionary.
Okay. Okay, if it's on Google.
It doesn't have to be explained. That's a normal word. Anything else? Just breaking wind? Okay. Google
then-
it. I'm sure.
When Mr. King said no impermanence, no potential
The words for belching and breaking wind are actually not in the scriptures. They are different. Belching is just the way how we call it, but that's not how they call it in the Buddha's time. Belching instead is called the air that goes up. So that means from the stomach, air goes up. All right. But then sometimes from the stomach, air goes down, then out.
Oh,
That's
okay.
breaking wind.
okay. Okay.
Got it?
Thank you.
So actually, belching in Burmese is called air going up, and breaking wind is called air going down. And sometimes when I teach this meditation practice, the Burmese are like, "What is this? Air going up and air going down." So that's the nature of the body, you know. So there's some movement happen.
Thank you. Bante.
This is Minlin. Min.
Bante, how do we make the determination this time?
From now on, for 60 minutes, I will meditate on 4 elements of the body without any movement. Okay. Nguyen Thu Trang, do you still have something to ask me? Okay.
I'm sorry, I forgot.
Nguyen, what is it?
Dear Bante, could you kindly make a list of 20 elements 20 parts of the elements of hardness?
I've already posted it yesterday, so I would like to ask Tutam to share it again in your Zala group, all of the 42 things. Anything else? That's it. Okay, so good luck. It's a hard work. Okay, and tomorrow when we meet, you will get totally different instruction. So make sure you don't lose a single minute. And if you can meditate more than 6 hours, like 8 hours, it's better. Tomorrow you will get absolutely totally different instruction. It will not be similar even this much. So make use of your time to the maximum. All right. But you need to do at least 1 hour of loving kindness. Okay. So out of the minimum 6 hours you're supposed to meditate until our next interview, you need to do at least 1 hour loving kindness. and at least 5 hours observing the 4 elements of the body. If you meditate more, you can decide what you do with the additional time, but I would suggest that you take more time for the 4 elements of the body. So you get 1 hour loving kindness and let's say 7 hours, the 4 elements of the body. You can see this is very difficult because you first have to learn it. You have to memorize it. So there's a lot of theory behind this practice. That's why this practice is not probably so famous, because people have to learn so much of information, and some people just don't want it. They want to stay simple, just with the breath, or with the feelings, and so they're successful that way. But those things, I do not teach breath, but I will be explaining to you feelings probably tomorrow. So we will be looking at other meditation practices. Tomorrow you will be switching to observing the mind, and mind is totally different from the body. So it's very important for you to to use every single minute, so that when you come to the different practice, you will be ready for it. The intention here, rather than getting some special insight or wisdom and so on, the more important intention here is to understand the difference between matter and the mind. So you are here observing so much in detail what is matter, so that you realize that whatever else is the mind. So then when we start to talk about the mind, you will consider, is in the mind any hardness? Is there any cohesion or temperature, or is there motion? You will see, so in perceptions or in decisions or in feelings, there's actually no hardness, cohesion, temperature, or motion. And that's why you can then meditate on mind correctly, something that's extremely rare and extremely difficult. People like to combine mind and body and think that the body is mind, mind is body, and then it's a problem. So when people are supposed to observe feelings, they think that feelings are actually the body, but they're not. Feelings are only the mind. Feelings have neither hardness, nor cohesion, nor temperature, nor motion. Okay, it's the body that has that. So to distinguish these, the mind and the body, you are first meditating on the body separately, so that when you move on to the mind, you are able to distinguish the mind from the body. All right, so it was a pleasure to see everybody, and hope to see you tomorrow. May you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be successful in everything you do.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you very much.
Bye.